everybody, my name is Grace, and today I'm going to read A Christmas Carol, Part 2. In Part 1 of A Christmas Carol, readers are introduced to Ebenezer Scrooge, a stingy, joyless moneylender in the 19th century London, whose business partner, Jacob Marley, died years before. No one subjects to fights of fancy. Scrooge has an unusual encounter with his door knocker. He didn't pause with a moment's irresolution. Before he shut the door, he did look cautiously behind it first, as if he half expected to be terrified with the sight of Molly's pigtails sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door, except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on. So he said, "Pooh, pooh," and closed it with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above, every cask in the wine merchant's cellar below, appeared to have a separate pair of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not the man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs, slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. Half a dozen gas lamps out of the street wouldn't have lighted the entry too well, so you might suppose that it was pretty dark with Scrooge's dip. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for that. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his room to see that was all right. That was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, as all as they should be. Nobody on the table, nobody under the sofa. A small fire in the grate. Spoon and basin ready. Nobody's under the bed. Nobody's in the closet. Nobody's in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual, of fire guards, of shoes, 2 fish baskets, washing stand on 3 legs, and a poker. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in, double-locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was very low fire indeed. Nothing on such a bitter night. He was obligated to sit close to it and brood over it. Before he could extract the least sensation of warmth from such a handful of fuel, "Humbug," said Scrooge, and walked across the room. After several turns, he sat down again, and as he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell, that hung in the room. With great astonishment and a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly and sounded every bell in the house. This might have lasted a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they began. Together, they were succeeded by a clanking noise, deep down below, as some person were dragging a heavy chain over the cask in the wine merchant's cellar. Scrooge then remembered to have heard the ghost in haunted house described as dragging chains. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound. He heard the noise louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight across towards his door. "It's humbug still. I won't believe it." His color changed though. when without a pause it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up, as through it cried, "I know him! Molly's ghost!" and fell again. The same face, the very same. Molly's in his pigtail, usual waistcoats, tights and boots, the tassel on the later briskly, like his pigtail, and his coat skirts, and hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail. It was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, threads, and a heavy process wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so the Scourge, observing him, looking through his waistcoat, could see the two buttons on his coat behind. Scourge has often heard it said that Marley had no guts, but he never believed it, until now. No, nor did he believe it now. Though he looked the phantom through and through, he saw it standing before him. He thought he felt the chilling influence of his death-cold eyes, and marked every texture of the folded kerchief bound about his head and chin, which wrapper he had not observed before. He was still incredulous, and fought against his senses. "How now?" said Scourge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want from me?" "Much." Molly's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who would you then?" asked Scourge, raising his voice. "In life I was your partner, Jacob Molly." "Can you sit down?" asked Scourge, looking doubtfully at him. "I can." "Do it then." Scourge asked the question, but he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair. In the event of being impossible, it might involve the necessity of embarrassing explanation. But the ghost sat down on its opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it. "You don't believe in me," observed the ghost. "I don't," said Scourge. "What evidence would you have of my reality beyond your senses?" "Beyond that of your senses?" "I don't know," said Scourge. "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because," said Scourge, "a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may have an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grade about you, whatever you are." Scourge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel, in his heart, by means waggish them. The truth is, he tried to be smart, as a means of distracting his own attention, and keeping down his terror. His spectre's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. To sit staring at those fixed glazed eyes in silence for a moment would play, Scourge felt, the very deuce with him. There was something very awful, too, in the spectres of being provided with an infernal atmosphere of his own. Scourge could not feel itself. But this was already the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, his hair and skirts and tassels were still agitated by the hot vapor from an oven. "You see this toothpick?" said Scourge, wishing through it were only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from himself. "I do," replied the ghost. "You're not looking at it," said Scourge. "But I see it," said the ghost, notwithstanding. "Well," returned Scourge, "I have but to swallow this, and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, out of my own creation. Humbug! I tell you, humbug! At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry. It shook its chain with such dismal and appalling voice. The Scotch held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom taking off the bandage around his head, and these were too warm to wear indoors. Its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. Mercy, he said, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me? Man of the worldly mind, replied the ghost. Do you believe in me or not? I do, said Scrooge. I must. But why do spirits walk on the earth? Why do they come to me? It is required of every man, the ghost returned, that spirits within him should walk abroad among his fellowmen. It should travel far and wide, and if that spirit goes not forth in life, is condemned to do so after death, is doomed to wander through the world and witness what it cannot share, but might have on earth, and turn to happiness. Again the spectre raised a cry, and shook his chain, and wrung its shadowy hands. You are fettered, said Scrooge, trembling. Tell me why. I wear the chain I forgave in life, replied the ghost. I made it link by link, yard by yard, gritted on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. It is, pardon, strange to you? Scrooge trembled more and more. Oh, would you know, pursued the ghost, the weight and length of the strong cord you bear yourself was full as heavy as long as this. 7 Christmas Eves ago, you have labored on since, upon dangerous chain. Scrooge glanced about him on the floor, in expectation of finding himself surrounded by iron cable, but he could see nothing. So that's all of the first half of A Christmas Carol Part 2, and I will see you next time. Bye!